Journeys Ahead, Beyond Trilogy, Part 3, Chapter 5, Father and Daughter, written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Joby, wake up! Come on, sweetheart. The sound of Cora's voice came as an echoing beckon, while Joby lay passed out upon the ground. Come on, sweet pea, come back to us. Void's words then asked, being the one to have actually sparked her nerves to start working again. Gently fluttering her eyes open, Joby winced to an orange glow from above. It was a starry, word-filled sky that was the same shade as an afternoon pumpkin. Tall and curving mountains stretched up to the sky, being accompanied by sets of giant fall trees and large metal structures that looked to have come from the reformatter itself. As her vision fully settled, the young spark's eyes locked upon two faces staring down at her, one being Void's and the other, Core. Father! She called while leaping up and into Void's arms. With a bear hug, Joby tightly held on to the red spark in a gasping breath and shaking body. In reaction, Void just gently held his daughter back, then locked his eyes with Core. The only way his face could have been described was expected disappointment. Yet, he wasn't going to argue or rant. He had dug this hole himself, and he knew it. What happened? Where are we? The pink spark curiously inquired, as she glanced around at the tangerine-shaded environment that looked to have jumped straight out of a fantasy novel. Soul Trial. Core then said with a dour face, as he stood up with his cloak flowing in the fall wind. A what? Void asked, as both him and Joby stood up as well, one looking curious, and the other with immediate anger. A soul trial. When doing my own research in this plane, there were hints as to what may have been past the desert. Another ring, perhaps a winter wasteland. Core began as he looked down to his feet, seeing small and large matter crystals jutting out like stones, all the color of orange. The Beyonders would whisper small talk about these supposed trials, ways to test one's soul. Given what the big guy said, looks like one of us, or perhaps all of us, had to figure out a struggle within. As for what that may be, Core said as he slowly looked over his shoulder and glanced at Joby, who just winced and turned away. I may have a few ideas, he muttered as his daughter refused to look in his direction. Biting the inside of his cheek and tapping the side of his leg, Void glanced from his left to right and then at his two family members. Wincing within the awkward silence, he suddenly took notice of the tree's shadows beginning to thin and elongate. The sun had been going down, and would be dark soon enough. Hey, let's find a spot to set up some kind of camp. I don't know what kind of predators are going to be in this place, Void stated as he activated his battle axe and turned towards a nearby tree. Resting the weapon up on his shoulder, he approached the large trunk and readied himself to get some firewood, all while the old father and his daughter remained silent and unable to speak. If Joby hadn't noticed it, Core had. This was something about them. As the orange sky devolved into a mixture of purples and blues, a green moon shimmered beautifully above, casting a gentle light down upon this Trials world formation. Glass animals, both ground-based and skybound, went about their business, while a little fire roared in a clearing of trees. As its orange flames danced and swayed, both Void and Joby sat beside one another, while Kor rested across from them. With his knees up and body hunched, the older Novason just stared into the burning embers that glistened off his tired eyes like an ocean's wave. Crickets chirped, wolves howled, while the three just remained silent around one another. Although awkward, Void suddenly took in the fact that for the first time since the fall of Salvaheim, his bloodline was actually together in peace. 2 brothers and a descendant, alone and on their own, no one else but them. Figuring that it would be best to at least try and spark up a conversation, Void sat upright and held his hands out to the fire, trying to warm them up before speaking. "So," he asked, with a long and drowning silence following soon after. "So," Kor replied, without so much as a glance to his brother. Joby didn't join in with a third "so." She was like Kor, looking at the fire, appearing to be lost and uneasy. Noticing this, Void leaned back with both hands pressed on the ground, wanting to make sure that his daughter was alright at the moment. "Are you okay, Sweet Pea?" he asked. "Fine," she responded in a dry voice, without even bothering to look up from her gaze. Wincing in an uneasy expression, Void decided to look back down to the fire himself. It was all off, he thought. This should have been a happy moment, a cherishing memory between the three of them. However, past events on all sides made the moment feel sour, extremely sour. Yet, it wasn't long until Kor asked something himself. "Well, since I'm stuck here for the time being, could you care to catch me up to speed?" The older Spark asked as he finally set his sights upon Void. "How many years exactly has it been since I left?" Looking back up with a red stare, Void thought on it for a few seconds before answering. "Well, given that Jay was born the same day, it's been a little over 14 years. Oh, the tears might." Void realized as he gripped his head. Although having been a long time, he looked to haven't aged a day, all thanks to his Spark Essence and now added God Serpent DNA. However, the memories were distant. "Man, that long, huh?" The older Spark muttered as he gently clawed at the dirt below him. "Yeah, after you... well, we thought you died. We had to rebuild the city. During that process, a bunch of baddies came out of the shadows from the power vacuum that was open. And we..." Void explained as he held on to Joby's hand. "We've all been protecting Earth ever since then. Nothing crazy outside of Lotus coming back happened. I'd say you didn't miss much, but that'd still be a lie." Void elaborated, leaving Kor to just gently nod his head. "I see," he mumbled with a crooked form to his mouth. "How's Father's spear holding up?" he then asked. Gently smiling, the red glowing spark extended the weapon out from his forearm, revealing its now black, gold, and red color palette to Kor's approval. "Still as clean as the day I repaired her. Still don't know how I feel about the red, though," he went on while Void retracted the weapon. "Yeah, me either. Hopefully I can get back the blue at some point. Just gotta figure out how." Void agreed as he turned his sights back upon his brother. "I've been meaning to ask, those colored rocks in your chest, are they..." The younger Novason questioned, pointing to the purple, yellow, green, and red shines glowing from underneath Kor's cloak. "The conductors? Yes." he revealed, causing Void to perk up, but for Joby to remain silent. When the reform matter went down, their spectral forms had nowhere else to go, except for me. Sensing my soul to be the only form of life, I can only assume they saw me as a safe haven. Kor theorized as he pulled the neck piece of his cloak down to reveal the bright shades of light. Are they still... Void continued to ask, causing Kor to frown. Their aspects only come out of my beast form. However, I choose not to unleash it. It only comes out when absolutely necessary. Kor went on before looking back up and eyeing his daughter. If you would allow me to ask, how have you been, Joby? Glancing up with her eyes only, Joby huffed in annoyance before looking back down at the fire that appeared to match the heat within her soul. Why do you care? She retorted, causing Kor to look back down in thought. I'm just curious. He quietly replied, leaving Void to sit with a small lump in his throat. Well, I can say it's been better than it was with you. The youngest spark spat, with a fake, twitchy-eyed smile now displayed for all to see. Joby, he just... Void tried to reason, but fell to a stop as Joby's horns ignited with a yellow flare. Narrowing his eyes towards the side, Kor bit the inside of his cheek before trying again. Well, how's Gluppy? Before her biological father could finish his sentence, Joby snapped her head upwards and glared upon him, as her irises burned with a light matter haze. Kor, I'm just gonna keep it a buck with you. I don't want to talk to you. With a face gently falling down in sorrow, Kor locked his eyes with Joby's as tensions quickly began to rise. All I'm asking is how you've been. Is that too much to answer? Kor inquired in a much weaker voice than before, causing Joby to chuckle in irritation. Things were wonderful after you died. But now, I'm not so sure. My brother's gone, and now I'm stuck in some stupid forest with the man who ripped some of my most innocent years away. Joby continued before standing to her feet. I don't care what this Beyond Our Trial thing is all about. Make it between you two, because I want nothing to do with it. Joby snapped as she suddenly turned on her heel and began wandering into the forest. Joby! Void tried to call with her reach, but within seconds, she had disappeared into the foliage. Kor, The spark tried to apologize on Joby's behalf, but was cut off by his brother's raspy words. It's not the bruises on the body that hurt. It is the wounds of the heart and the scars on the mind. He muttered before fully standing to his feet. Void, it is clear to me that this trial is somehow linked for both me and Joby. That is, if anything here is related to you. Kor asked as he gestured to how the forest was designed. Nothing of note, but if that's the case, why am I here with you two and not Jida? Void questioned as Kor looked down with thought. Because you're the only linchpin in keeping this family together. He stated in a silencing sentence before beginning to trudge off into the woods after Joby. Wandering through the moonlit forest, Joby swatted at dangling leaves and kicked at glowing crystals within her path. This was ridiculous, she thought. After all this time of being at a sense of peace and tranquility, the monster had returned in one of the worst ways imaginable.
Joby!
Her beast then called from behind, causing the little spark's nerves to ignite like fire. Clenching her fists and looking over her shoulder, she watched as the weakened form of her false father came bumbling through the trees, being outlined by his glowing orange eyes and horns. "What the hell do you want?" she barked while turning around and throwing her arms up.
We just have to talk,"
Kor replied with a weak breath as he slowed his jog to a stop. "Are you deaf? I already said I don't want to talk to you," Joby angrily exclaimed, causing the forest to suddenly shift and sway around them. The gentle orange leaves had now begun to grow sharper at their tips, while the trunks sprouted sets of arm-sized thorns.
"I know, and I understand. Look around you. The reform-matter parts, the crystals,"
Kor explained as he dimmed his eyes to a more natural haze.
"We've been paired together for a reason. Our souls, they're broken. I believe we won't be able to leave unless we settle this."
Kor tried to explain, causing Joby to glare with her burning yellow eyes. Baring her teeth, she slowly extended out her light matter blades from the roofs of her hands, and then readied herself for a fight.
"That's not what I meant,"
Kor responded with worry, only for Joby to shake her head.
"I don't care."
Coming out from under her boots, Joby activated her rocket skates and blasted forwards. Rising up from the rush, she spun her golden blades down and nearly clashed them upon Kor. However, he quickly stepped back and evaded the attack without so much as a shield.
"Please, this is unnecessary."
Kor tried to reason as Joby quickly stood back up. "Is that what you told me when you wired me the power cables?" Joby asked with a leftward swing that just narrowly cut Kor's stomach open. "Or when you disassembled my limbs before my very eyes?" She continued before leaping up with a boost and ramming her blade down, causing Kor to barrel roll into a somersault. As he did this, his cloak ripped on the floor and fell from his torso, revealing to Joby his scorched and melted form that left her frozen for a few seconds in shock.
"It was in order to keep you healthy, to keep you safe."
Kor tried to reason, causing Joby to immediately lose her sympathy. "Well, look how that turned out," she boasted before opening her chest and unleashing her own set of rockets upon Kor. With widening eyes, he quickly stood and ran away from the fire erupting from behind. Sealing her chest, Joby summoned out 2 Nova runes and clashed them together, creating a light matter blast. As the beam neared Kor, the older Nova Sun quickly leapt downwards and evaded it, causing it to cease slight moments after.
"Do you think I wanted to put you through all that? To see you cry every time the procedure happened?"
Kor asked as Joby now looked like a jack-o'-lantern of golden rays. Her panel line shimmered, her horns were at full capacity, while a spark like pollen radiated out of her seams. The anger within Joby had charged into something that she hadn't ever used before, a form of pure light matter strength that made her look angelic. "Sure felt that way when you chained me down!" Joby exclaimed while smashing her fist into the ground, causing a sound-wave pulse of light that Kor just barely leapt over.
"You would have died! I couldn't bear to lose you! I couldn't bear to lose another member of my family!"
Kor tried to explain as Joby reapproached with swinging blades. "Continuing to live like that would have made death a welcoming gift. I don't care if it benefited me. The way you went about your methods, the way you treated me in those labs. I was just a little girl, and you treated me like a rat." Joby exclaimed as she managed to get a good hit across Kor's chest, causing dark matter to spray and for him to groan. "And that's just the surface. I was forced to watch worlds die, made to face creations that still plague my nightmares to this day." Joby continued as she slashed again, creating an X scar across Kor's chest. "You think coming here and becoming a teacher would change the way I view you? That's not how it works. Leaping up to his chest level, Joey ferociously kicked Core down onto his back, causing some of his rusted metal to break off and shatter. It doesn't matter how much you've changed. What you did to me, Atlas, Evelyn, Void, everyone. They may view you differently, but you will always be a monster in my heart. Joby spat as she stomped her glowing boot atop Core's chest, pressing him into the soil. Gasping, Core didn't attempt to fight back, as his daughter continued to shine like a star. Wincing, he could feel the heat off the light gently burning away at his skin. Gasping, he gripped her shoe as she looked ready to unleash another blast upon his frail soul. With a grunt, he looked upon Joby with remorse before speaking out.
If you're going to kill me, at least let me say one thing to you. As your father.
Core asked, causing Joby to snarl. I have a father, and his name is Void Novason, she exclaimed, causing the forest below them to suddenly shatter apart like glass. Before they had time to react, both Core and Joby went plummeting down into the dark abyss, where they soon landed into an unknown area of the Beyonder's making. Pushing herself up with her hands and knees, Joby winced to a sudden bright and warm light, along with the sensation of sand to her hands. As her vision settled, the young spark took in the fact that she had suddenly appeared upon a beach, a calm summer beach that was resting before a glorious sunset over an ocean. The sky was both orange and pink, while the water had a deep blue shine that almost appeared purple.
What the?
Joby asked, before suddenly taking notice of her voice. It was higher, softer than before. Looking down at herself, she gasped in shock, seeing that she was now 7 years old once again. She had on her lavender overalls, yellow shirt, and little rain boots again, causing her to stumble back on her hands in disbelief. Yet, it was then she looked to her left, seeing her father, Core, looking as he did all those years ago. No rust, no spikes, just Core, sitting and watching the sunset with sad eyes. What just happened? Where are we? What's going on? Joby asked, finding herself now unable to move from her current position, which was about 3 feet beside her father.
We're in an old dream. One that I've had for the both of us since you were born.
Core quietly revealed as the waves crashed upon the shore.
What?
Joby asked as she tried to move from her spot, but found that some otherworldly, invisible force kept her down. Not having the strength to gaze upon his daughter's small form from the past, Core just watched as the sun continued to set below the ocean, while seagulls flew overhead in cooing calls.
She's beautiful, is she not?
Core asked as Joby gave up on trying to escape. Throwing her arms down with an irritated face, she lazily swung her head back forwards and finally took in the sight of the sunset. After a few moments of taking it all in, Joby suddenly felt the tiniest waves of ease creeping into her heart, that left her tense face dropping into a more relaxed state.
I guess,
she replied before side-eyeing her father.
You know, those were the same words I said to both Atlas and Evelyn the day you were born.
Core revealed as the two sparks now just watched the calm waves dance within their sights. You mean getting pumped out of a tube? Joby replied with a furrowed brow, as Kor continued to watch the sea.
You may not have had a natural mother, Joby, but when a creature takes in its first ever breath, then the miracle of birth applies all the same.
Kor expressed with calm words, as Joby just listened in.
Why are you telling me this?
She questioned, looking down at the sand, having no other thought outside of wanting to just walk away.
Because I never got the chance.
Looking down with regret, Kor too clawed at the orange sands, while feeling a heavy wave of guilt stabbing into his heart.
Joby, what I've done to you, I can never mend that wound. I was more concerned for my own sanity over your mental well-being.
Kor went on, causing Joby to turn around and face him.
Why did you keep doing it then? You heard my sobs, my pleads. What gave you the idea to keep it up for so long?
Joby asked, as she gripped the sides of her arms, reminiscing on the pain she had felt.
When Savaheim fell, I was working as a school teacher. The children, I tried to save them, but I failed.
Kor revealed to Joby as he looked back at the sea's endless dance.
A little girl, no older than you at the time. She died in my arms, unable to see in her final moments. When you were born, immediate complications arose and
Kor slowed his words as tears began to well in his eyes.
I couldn't bear the sight of seeing my own kind passing again, let alone who I thought to be the last breathing member of my blood. I was scared. Stupid.
Closing his eyes, Kor let tears of regret spill to the sands below, all while Joby watched in silence.
I thought, I had hoped, that perhaps you would have healed after the first few times, but a new problem arose again and again. I couldn't lose you.
Reopening his eyes, Kor looked back to the ocean once again, the never-ending ocean that continued to pass on by.
I should have been better. I should have been your father, not your monster.
Kor said, as he rested his head in his left hand.
Believe me, Joby, when I tell you that when I destroyed the Reformator, I intended to die. I wanted to die. When that didn't work, I tried several times again in this realm.
Kor expressed in a deep sense of sadness, leaving Joby's eyes to perk.
This power inside me, the darkness refuses to let me die. The only force in this entire omniverse that could put me down is light matter.
Raising a hand to his chest, Kor took in a long breath as the glinting water reflected off his orange-tinted metal body, making things feel all the more serene in a sense.
But I know that no matter what I do, no matter what I say, it will never change what I've done. To you, to that void in them, all those worlds I took. All I can do now is try to be better.
Kor finished, leaving Joby to take in a very long inhale and then exhale.
What do you want me to say, Dad? Oh, I'm so sorry for beating the shit out of you. I forgive you. Oh no, you feel bad, therefore it's okay now. Is that what you want me to say? Just help you sleep better? The smile, maybe? Is that it?
Joby asked with anger, leaving Kor to hang his head low.
I am not asking you to say anything. All I want is for you to listen.
Finally turning his head, Kor gazed upon his daughter, locking his eyes with hers as they continued the spill with silent and shameful tears. With this, he muttered 3 little words that Joby in truth had been waiting to hear for a long time.
I am sorry.
Gazing into her father's eyes, Joby could see something within. The once tense and terrifying stare he would give was now replaced with the look of someone who deeply hated themselves. The fire had fizzled out long ago. The tensions were laid to rest. Although hard for Joby to fully accept, she was smart enough to see that Kor had changed in some regard. But the demon he once carried still shadowed over his soul for the most part, leaving Joby's anger to fade and just drop into a tired wince. Scooting her knees up, she hugged them close to her chest and gazed back out over the purple sea.
Some scars hurt, Dad. Some scars are numb. And some scars rid you of the capacity to feel anything ever again.
Joby replied with strain as she rested her head on her knees.
I can see that you're trying, but I'm not Void, Chida, or the others. They weren't there. They didn't go what I went through. I can understand in some regard that it was out of love, but...
Joby tried to speak as the waves began to slow their pace, while the tiniest of heavenly lights began to open above their heads.
I can't forgive you. Because you never took the time to understand how your actions affected me back then.
Joby said while closing her eyes.
The apology was long overdue.
The young spark finished, as the scene slowly shifted back into the woods, returning both Kor and Joby back to their modern forms. However, now sitting in front of a calm pond as opposed to a grand sunset.
Forgiveness requires empathy, and my actions are ones not to be emphasized.
Kor sadly expressed as the light above faded. We done here? Joby asked as a wave of sleepiness took over her soul.
For the time.
Kor replied as Joby suddenly slumped into his side in a deep sleep. Slowly turning his head, Kor gently reached out with hesitant hands and scooped his daughter up into his arms. She was out cold, tired and unresponsive. The fight and emotional stress must have been a lot on her, Kor reasoned, as he stood and began making his way for camp. As he walked, the older Novason, oddly enough, found himself proud of Joby. She had grown into a woman who could stand her ground, decide upon her own feelings over others, even family. Void had taught her well. Looking over her face, Kor also realized just how beautiful she was as a grown woman. His little girl had come a long way. It didn't matter if she hated him. Kor was just grateful to have even shared a moment with her again after all these years. Breaking the tree line and into camp, Void turned and eyed both of them as Kor gently rested Joby down into a patch of soft grass. Hey, how'd it go? I thought I heard an explosion. Void asked as Kor took a seat across from him.
My head isn't on the floor, but better than last time.
He replied, looking back to the flames. Well, it's better than nothing, I suppose. She'll come around. I hope. Void tried to speak in hopes to see his family unite again one day.
I wouldn't hope too hard, brother. I believe she's made up her mind. Tomorrow, we'll have to find another way out of this place.
Kor said, as he rested down into the grass and stared upon the stars.
Get some rest. We've got a long trek ahead, it would seem.
Core asked, before slowly closing his eyes and attempting to fall asleep. Opening her eyes to the sound of a mourning dove, Joby found herself laying on her side and in a patch of yellow grass. In front of her, both her true father and Core slept, having looked uncomfortable through the night. Sighing, she gently sat upright and stretched, as a dim morning light began to shine over the horizon in a golden ray. It seemed early, about 5 to almost 6 a.m. by your estimate. Well, guess I fell asleep first, Joby said before yawning wide. After this, she cracked her knuckles and back and then attempted to stand, but found that she couldn't. The hell? Joby quietly questioned while trying to move her legs, but stopped upon noticing a mixture of both matter strands and cables tightening around her limbs. What the? She now shouted, awakening both Void and Core. As her shout reverberated across the forest, the being that had its mitts upon her suddenly revealed itself to the brothers' immediate shock. Joby! They both cried as their girl was rapidly entangled within cords and matter, pinning her into a trap-like state. Before she could scream again, several more cables arose and wrapped themselves around her mouth, leaving only a muffled call to escape. Bursting out from behind Joby appeared a large amalgamation of what looked like the conductors and mechanical parts. It was a mixture of bubbling, steaming sludge, with robotic joints protruding wires and jagged rustle metal shards coming out of its arms and back. The creature had a long, matter-spiked tail, dragon-like wings, long neck, and a gooey face, with bright white goofy teeth and large eyes, the left again red, and the right purple. Hacking out a devilish cackle, the monster pulled Joby in close and flapped its wings. As it did, the force of wind knocked the two brothers down, giving it the chance to suddenly fly off. In a muffled cry, Joby tried to fight back, but this beyond her illusion seemed to be draining her in some way with its natural, or rather, unnatural power.
No! Joby!
Core exclaimed as he suddenly threw himself up and began sprinting after the monster, now with his disgusting, matter-induced body exposed to the world.
Joby!
Void exclaimed as he ran in a hard sprint behind his brother. Charging with their respective powers, Void immediately activated his wings and blasted after the beast. In a cherry red ignition, he rose up and practically nosedived back down, deploying his Nova Blades as he did so. Turning its head like an owl, the creature cackled again before rising some kind of blue, glowing speaker out of its matter. With this, the amalgamation unleashed an EMP scream that instantly deactivated Void's wings and sent him crashing back down to the world below with a shout. Upon seeing this, Core threw both his hands out and extended strands of dark matter above. Using these, he caught his brother and brought him back down to a running sprint, however, in a weaker state.
What happened?
Core asked as Void began to lag behind. I don't know. The thing just disabled several of my motor functions. Void exclaimed with a wince as they watched the creature fly overhead, with Joby still struggling to break free. Fully turning around, the conductor-like illusion went cross-eyed on both its outer left and right, and laughed out once more. Throwing its arms out, the beast extended several of its cables with antenna-like rods at their ends. With these, it began shooting upon the sprinting sparks, causing them to both dodge and evade. Eruptions of green, red, purple, and yellow matter went off like landmines around their dashing bodies, as Joby continued to fight against the beast at hand. What the hell is that thing? Void asked as he front-flipped over a red matter impact.
I think it's a mashup of the conductors and metal parts from the reformatter. Some kind of representation of me, I suppose.
Core called as he performed a flip over a yellow strike, somersaulting back upright as he did so. "Who makes you say that?" Void asked back, as they both broke through the tree line and entered a large field of sharp, jagged, massive matter crystals.
"Don't think about it too hard,"
the older Novason asked, as they both took in what was ahead of them. There in the distance was what looked to have been the upper half of the reformator, its long needle top that ended at a cracked glass roof. The rest of it seemed to have been submerged in the world's soil. Before anyone had time to react, the monster that had Joby in its clutches suddenly arose several of its sharp cables and ferociously stabbed them into both of her arms, neck, and abdomen, recreating the same medical procedure Cora enacted upon her when she was younger. Howling in muffled pain, Joby immediately started to cry as both the anguish and memories of her past came flooding back in. Upon seeing this in its current stance in life, Cora's eyes furrowed down into a pure orange glow, with an enraged growl escaping its mouth.
"Void, hop on!"
he exclaimed with a head gesture towards his brother.
"What?"
Void asked as he neared the reformator.
"Hop on my back, now!"
Cor barked as he set his sights upon the monster. With panicked and confused eyes, Void quickly ran up, jumped, and took hold of one of Cor's back spines. Upon setting both feet down at his brother's side, Cor suddenly bellowed out an old but familiar, monstrous scream, and within an instant, transformed into his monster form with ease. "Oh, Matira's might!" Void exclaimed as Cor nearly doubled in size, glared ahead with his widened orange mouth eye and newly swaying tail that had a thagomizer, a clear add-on from the conductors within him. Bellowing another roar to his daughter's pain, Cor's speed began to increase drastically. His massive matter feet and animalistic bent legs gave him a heavy boost in keeping pace, leaving Void holding on for dear life. Occasionally, Cor would drop to his hands mid-sprint and run like a true beast before returning back to an upright stance. Grunting and huffing, his body now glowed with an orange mix of reds, greens, yellows, as well as purples that seemed to be powering him much more than last time. Flapping its wings, the illusion began to ascend the side of the reformator, leaving Cor to jump forwards and slash his claws into the side of his once great machine. Using this, he began to rapidly climb up and after the monster that continued to shoot down at the brothers in rapid succession. Holding on tightly to his brother's spines, Void watched as Cor leapt from left to right, maneuvering as though he were a great ape ascending a great mountainside. Up and up they went, getting further and further away from the ground, leaving Void desperately trying not to look down. At last, the monster flew itself into the reformator's top chamber, leaving Cor with Void atop his back to slide in and roar at the beast. Giving out its now signature cackle, the monster tilted its head upon the brothers as they glared back in anger.
"I get Joby, and then we kill it,"
Cor commanded in a more monstrous tone, but before anything could happen, the beast spun and flung Joby's injured body over the ledge, leaving the two brothers screaming her name.
"Joby!"
With a pulse and extension of newly gifted red dark matter wings, Cor flapped forwards towards his daughter, while Void eyed the monster with anger. Deploying his spear and battle mask, he kicked off Cor's body and stabbed the monster mid-air. As Void did this, Cor flew out of the reformator's top and immediately nosedived to Joby's weak form. Turning his face back to normal, Cor watched in absolute horror as the ground gap between them closed in at a rapid pace. With dread in her heart, Joby, in a teary-eyed state, reached out for Cor with an open and quivering hand. Flapping his wings as hard as he could, Cor reached out his clawed mitt for his daughter, being unsure if he would be able to reach her. "Dad!" she weakly called as the ground grew ever closer.
"Joby!"
he called back with both dread and love, as the distance between them was now about 5 feet. The older Novason was unsure if he would be fast enough. Time was running out. Matter spikes were getting larger. He wouldn't lose his little girl. It didn't matter if she despised him. She was still his daughter, and he wouldn't let anything happen to her.
Never again. If he hadn't been a good dad at all, then it was better to start now than never. Joby! With relative ease, Void was able to quickly get an upper hand upon the monster. Spinning through the air, the spark continued to dig his spear into the beast and simply switched its mode into Earth Shock. With this, the weapon's tip reacted to the matter around its blade, registering it to be a solid mass. Before the large illusion even had time to react, an eruption of red electricity blew its side apart and sent the both of them crashing down to the reformattor's floor, looking the same as it did the day Void changed Core's outlook. Rolling and grunting with a retracting spear and mask, Void quickly slid to a halt and turned to look upon the creature. With a hard slam, it plopped upon the floor and came to a melting halt. Getting back to his feet, the spark activated his new bow weapon and arrows and took aim at the creature's flinching form, watching as its eyes glared at him in a flickering manner. Wincing, Void got ready to strike, but suddenly halted himself as a voice began speaking from the purple eye. Dad? With his own eyes widening, Void instantly retracted his weapon and stood the full height with a cold sweat. Jay? He asked in shock, realizing that he had just heard his son's voice for the first time in a little over 2 years. Dad, what are you doing here? The boy asked with a purple iris, getting Void to rush the now fading illusion in a panic. What? Jay! Buddy! I'm here! We're here! Void exclaimed with tears welling as he slid down and held the monster's gross head up, waiting for Jay to speak through the eye again. Dad, you. Jay spoke anew, sounding to now be losing some kind of signal. What is it, buddy? I'm here. How are you speaking through? What's going on? Are you okay? Are you safe? Void babbled with teary eyes as Jay talked once more. Dad, you, all of you, leave, he said, causing Void to blink in surprise. What? He questioned as the red eye suddenly flashed to life with a familiar and haunting laugh. Gasping and dropping the head of the monster, Void fell on his rear and scooted far back, breathing intensely as the rest of the monster faded from view. Clutching his chest, Void shook with a heavy sense of panic. He wasn't sure as to what had just happened, but it was his boy and Lotus. Jay. Void weakly expressed in awe before being drawn to the sound of wings flapping from behind. Turning his head, the red-crested spark took in the sight of Core, back in his normal form, flying up and over the ledge. Landing upon the reformattor's top, Void sighed with relief upon seeing his daughter within his arms. Joby, he gasped before getting back up and marching over towards the two of them, however, still shaken. With gentle hands, Core carefully turned and went to hand Joby's weakened body to Void. However, she just stared up at Core with wide and shocked eyes, leaving him to look back in a nervous wince. You saved me? After everything I said and did to you? Joby asked in disbelief, while eyeing the X slash across Core's chest and the visible cut to his wrist. Why? Sighing in a tired breath, Core gently maneuvered forwards and put her within the arms worthy of comfort, feeling a sense of self-acceptance in his soul as he did so. Because you are still my daughter, and whether you like it or not, I will protect you, even if it's up to my last breath. Core explained, leaving Joby to just stare within Void's arms.
Locking her eyes with Core, she once again took in the sight of his faded rage, changed personality and outlook, the stare of someone who was attempting to be better. Squinting, Joey looked to the ground and gripped Void's hood, feeling unsure about what was about to leave her mouth. I suppose that this is the part where I forgive you, or I finish what I started. Joby asked with a now firm stare as Core just silently stood and looked back with his tired eyes.
The choice is yours, daughter.
After a long moment of silence, Joby awkwardly grunted and got out of Void's now nerve-wracked arms. As she did this, the young spark stood back to the ground in a wobbly manner, but managed to take a step forwards in a firm stance, although Void kept a close eye, ready to intervene if she tried anything. Slowly deploying her right matter blade, Joby glared upon her biological father with a continuous stare as he looked prepared for whatever outcome was about to commence. Standing there with burning eyes, silent tears suddenly began to spill as a conflicted set of emotions began to clash within her head. There was so much hate, yet realization as to what was happening now. Core had changed. But what he did in the past, it was a split. Truthfully, I don't think I can do either, Joby revealed as she pointed her blade at Core's face. There is a part of my soul that burns with nothing but hatred for you, and it is a flame that will always burn, Joby shouted as she nearly pressed the tip of her blade upon Core's neck. But I can't. Now, slowly retracting her blade, Joby took a step back and continued on with her words that surprised the two Novazone brothers. I see now that you did die in the crash. The side that was once a monster. I do see that. Slumping back with weak legs, Joby fell into Void's arms, causing him to hold her up once more as she continued to speak. Core, everything I've done to you these past 2 days, she said before her father gently raised his hand.
You had, and still have every right to do as such. I wish you not to apologize, Joby.
Kneeling down, Core reached his hand out for his daughter, who after a few hesitant seconds, took it on her own.
What I have done will never be fixed. You are, and always have been, my reminder to be a better soul since that day. Thank you for attempting to see that in me.
Core expressed as the two of them gently interlocked their fingers. Without saying a word, Joby just nodded, leaving Void to smile with a sense of relief. Suddenly opening from their sides, the Novazone family set their sights upon a golden arched door as a yellow and warm light illuminated brightly above their heads. Wincing to this, they all eyed down the strange door that looked akin to some kind of portal, leaving the trio a tad awestruck. Whoa, what's that? Joby asked as Void turned to face the passage with her in his arms.
I think this is our exit. At least I hope.
Core replied, looking down to his two family members. Guess there's only one way to find out, Void mumbled as the light beckoned them to cross through. Looking at each other once more, both Joby and Core nodded their heads. Although the wounds would forever remain, Joby could only hope that this version of her father would stay as such, and be a positive,
as opposed to a negative.
Come on. Jay needs us.
She reminded, gesturing with her hands to move onwards. Taking in a breath and recalling upon the voices he heard, Void slowly began to march forwards with Core at his side, wondering as to where they would go next. If bad, at least everyone was on better terms. With that, perhaps they would prevail in a stronger light, as opposed to a negative. Only time would tell, however, he thought, before crossing through to the other side.